So I have the YouTuber Bullet Berry here. I turns out he's an ex-Jehovah's Witness, just like me. Thanks for coming, Bullet Berry.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
You want me to just call you Barry?
Oh, yeah, that's totally fine.
Okay, cool. So I'm always interested when I find out about other YouTubers who happen to be ex-Jehovah's Witness. So I was hoping I could ask you a couple questions about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the first question I had for you was, were you born into the religion or did you join later?
No, I was absolutely born in. My mother and father found it when they were kids, and they just held on to it their entire lives.
Okay, interesting. So you were born into it and your parents were in it since they were little kids. I assume they probably met in quote unquote the truth, right? What they call it.
Yeah, I think they met in high school, and then like they had that thing that connected them. My father left when I think in 1993 he stopped going, but he still like preaches all the time to me about how it's the one true religion and all that. So,
Really? That is very interesting. So actually that brings me to another question I had for you. I assume you have family members on the inside
mhm.
still. So how many family members do you have on the inside?
Geez, like all of them.
Really?
Everyone on my mother's side is either some denomination of Christian, but then on my father's side, um, they're mostly all Jehovah Witness. I think when my father was about 13, um, the whole family kind of got into Jehovah Witness, and most of them just grew up and remained. There are a couple of them who moved on to different religions, but I don't think a single one of them just left religion altogether. I think they're all just still religious.
Very interesting. So has there been any kind of blowback since you left, like shunning or anything like that? What kind of social consequences did you have to deal with? Any or
Most of I've never really been close with a lot of my family, so there wasn't a ton of blowback. And the ones who do know that I left end up like preaching their religion onto me. Like it's it's mostly just, hey, we're sad to see you go. We'd love to see you come back and invite you all the time. I didn't get a lot of blowback from the family. It was most of the other people who are in the religion, like my friends. That's where it kind of took a hit, you know.
right, for sure. I know what you mean. Commonly when you leave the religion like that, they kind of make sure that your entire social structure is on the inside. So when you leave, you have to deal with the consequences by losing friends and things like that. So I do know what you mean there. So I had another question for you about that. When did you leave? Like, how old were you when you left?
I was 18 or 19. I'm 23 now. I was 18 or 19, and I was doing my own thing. I was doing plays. I wanted to be an actor for a little bit. And when you do plays, you don't really have a lot of time to yourself. So I just wasn't going to the meetings. And after a time, the friends that I developed felt closer to me within the plays, and the ones who I still continued to hang out with after school. I was closer with them than I was any of my religious friends, because a lot of my religious friends, you grow into it and you only have like a select group. You don't really get to choose. And
Right.
they were all females. And if you know anything about the religion, and most religions are this way, you don't get to hang out with females unless you have like chaperones.
Yep.
So when it came down to it, I kind of got lucky in regards to friends, because most of them were just on the outside anyway.
That I know exactly what you mean. It's actually kind of interesting because I remember when I was on the inside, I wasn't allowed to drive in a car with a female in the front seat next to me. She had to sit in the back seat. I mean, even like if she's a little bit older than me, like 10 years older than me or something, right? They always create this weird dynamic between men and women that it's just so hard to overcome once you get on the outside. And not just that, but I don't know if you've seen the Pillowgate videos, but they're creating this weird dynamic between men and men now, and women and women. So I
Wait,
don't know.
what do you mean?
Had you not heard about this?
No,
Okay.
not at all.
So basically, there were some leaks from Bethel where when people enter into Bethel, they're given these training videos and things like that.
Mhm.
And these training videos are all about touching yourself and things. And they give these really
Good Lord.
specific examples about if you're drinking and you're with another man and he's a friend of yours, and you're in this room together alone, and just things will happen and you get these feelings and stuff. And it's like, if that happens to you, you're probably gay, which is okay. I mean, be gay, but those feelings have never happened to me. It's
No.
just an oddly specific example. So anyway, yeah, they're creating this weird dynamic between men and men now, is the premise of it. So we'll see how that pans out.
Very interesting. Like that just, there must be a big enough problem for them to be doing that. That's quite strange.
I
But
know.
okay.
Yeah, they gave they basically had two leaked videos. They had one for females and one for males. And they gave like at least 3 or 4 examples of really specific, odd situations that I've never encountered in my life.
Right.
So anyway, it's pretty funny. But yeah, I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit about your story about leaving the religion. Like, what got you to kind of decide it isn't true?
Sure. Okay. So I was one of those, and I find them extremely annoying today. One of those people who is very into science and very into just the world around me and learning as much as I can about it. But if anything at all argued with my belief system, my worldview, it annoyed me, and I always fought back. Like if someone were to say, there's more proof that evolution is the way that human beings came to be, it would piss me off, and right. I'd be like, that's just right. That's ludicrous. But I can't believe I stuck with science for as long as I did. I fell in love with just the world, and I would follow these YouTube channels that were run by scientists.
Got any examples?
Thunderfoot is one of them that I would watch.
I watched a lot of him too. Yeah.
Yeah, I like Thunderfoot. And I found him through like some feminist videos, but he does a lot of really, really interesting scientific experiments, and he's been doing a lot more recently, and it just always has intrigued me. And he had a video of a quote from Christopher Hitchens, who was he called himself an atheist, and he essentially just debates against religion. And he showed a quote from him, and it just instantly intrigued me. It was him talking about Christopher Hitchens essentially saying, I hate when I get in these debates and people cry and say, well, that's offensive, as though it somehow constitutes an argument. I don't care if you're offended. If you don't like what I'm saying, that's too bad, but I'm going to say it anyway, and you're just going to have to deal with that. And I just appreciated that sentiment right there. And I was like, I have to find this guy. And I looked him up. This is when I was 18 or 19. And I realized exactly what he did. And instantly I was like, oh God, this is not something I can look into. But he was debating people from different religions. I watched the first one. He was debating a Catholic. And I was like, well, wait a minute. If he's going to disprove a Catholic, that's fine, because he's not disproving my religion.
Right.
He's disproving a religion that I don't particularly have any, stock in. So,
yeah.
So I don't care. So I watch it, and everything he says just made sense. And though it didn't hurt me because he wasn't debunking my religion, I started seeing this worldview from the opposite side that I'd never even considered before. Like where we came from, the idea of evolution, the Big Bang, and how it might actually make sense. And how these things that I just believed, being, you know, a person who was brought up in, you know, your average school system and knows how the world works, just tie in well and don't leave me asking questions. Because a lot of the time you ask questions and you get the answer, well, because God said so. But he was answering questions that I'd had for years and I could never get the answer to. And he just answered them like, no problem. I already know the answer. It's common knowledge. And it just blew me away because he wouldn't say, well, because I said so, or science said so, or he would just give the information, lay it all out on the table. And it just, after watching him for so long, that's when I kind of realized not a lot of this makes sense.
Right. That's pretty interesting. Yeah, I've actually been a fan of Christopher Hitchens for a long time too. Thunderfoot, Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris. And the thing about them is they don't just necessarily have all of the answers, but also they're not afraid to say, I don't know the answer. That is an acceptable answer to them, right? I mean, they're okay with saying in response to the question, you know, how did humans appear here? We don't make up some answer about some deity or something that came here and put us here. It's okay to say, I'm waiting on the science. I don't know how we got here, right? That's always been one of my favorite things about Christopher Hitchens. He has just a killer accent too. I love.
Oh my God, his voice mixed with his accent. Like I sit there and go, yeah, you. God,
I know.
There was actually a time he was debating someone, and they pointed that out because they realized that they were losing the crowd, and they were like, you know, sometimes I wish I had the voice of Christopher Hitchens, and it would really help me in these debates. And you're sitting there like, I mean, it's not exactly that, but God, it helps.
I know, for sure. Something I've noticed too recently is, I don't know if you've heard of Cosmic Skeptic, but I don't know. I've watched a few of his videos recently. He's got that voice too. He's got that accent that draws you in a little bit. Maybe it's just Americans that are drawn to that. But anyway, so I had another question for you. Do you think you'd ever join another religion? You're not religious now, are you?
No. And I don't see any reason I would. I've met people though. Like I know this girl. I've known her ever since I was in kindergarten, and she's been a Christian her entire life. And when I started realizing that it didn't make sense, she was like one of my best friends. I went to her and I was like, hey, this is how I've been kind of thinking for a little bit. And she goes, no, I totally agree. I feel the same way. And that struck me a little bit. And I was like, what? Well, aren't you Christian? And she's like, I'm Christian for my family. So I think the most extreme I would ever go is if I had a loved one that I truly cared about. There's a chance that I would go to her, you know, church, and I would sing the songs. But beyond that, there's really nothing that would really hold me to any religion. I've not that I've seen, and I've studied a lot of them.
Right. Yeah. I'm sure you've watched my channel. It's probably how you found me. But I have my daughter, Alpha Force Zero. She actually goes to a Methodist church with her family, and I justify that because I've been to that church a few times with that family. I go on the holidays, you know, every Easter and every Christmas and all that stuff, and I sing the songs and things. I think that it creates a good sense of community sometimes, as long as they're not extremists. Then I would have no issue with it, just the same as you would. You know, if it was somebody I cared about, I think I would probably show up and sing the songs too. So I'm on the same page. What do you think of shunning now that you're on the outside?
Yeah, that's interesting. I went through some crap with that, and I didn't even realize would have. So I wanted to keep it a secret for as long as possible, because you don't want to cut ties to the people you care about, but you also don't particularly care that much about the religion anymore, right? It's not enough to make you stay, especially the friends, not enough to make you stay.
Right.
But I mean, they figure it out. You know, you're not busy all the time. And eventually they came to me and they were like, hey, you know, what's going on? And I told them, you know, I trusted them, and I told them. And I remember I don't know if you did this. I don't know how common this is, but whenever someone would leave the religion, there was always that little group of people who would sit in the corner and gossip and tell awful things about that person and what they're
Yeah,
up to now. Oh my God, they
for sure.
celebrate Halloween now. Did you know that? Did you know they celebrate birthdays now? And they're like, put such a bad idea of that person
Yep. They
in
demonize them.
right. And I sat there thinking as I was confessing, that conversation is going to be about me this week. It's going to be about me. And there's nothing I can do to stop that. And I guess that's fine, but it just kind of hurts a little bit. You know, that sucks. And eventually there came a point where they did shun me. They didn't want to talk to me anymore. My family was going to go bowling with another religious family, and they said, we don't want to go because Barry's going to be there. And
Mm.
I don't know, it really, it sucked. It made you feel worthless. And eventually they did come to the house and they apologized, and we're really upset. And I actually wrote something out to read to them that kind of like hit us all pretty hard. I essentially, like, what it boiled down to was, because I don't feel it or because I don't feel the same way that you do. I'm no longer worth anyone's time. And when it came down to it, if you felt that your God, without any proof, if you felt that your God wanted me dead, I don't think a single one of you would have an issue killing me. That's how I felt when you guys did what you did to me. And I don't think they got that. I don't think they absorbed what that exactly meant. And it was funny because ironically the adult woman whom I was speaking with said, well, firstly, we don't want you dead. Secondly, if you're open-minded enough, perhaps you can consider coming back.
Mm.
And that was very ironic to me.
The reason that's interesting to me is because ultimately they believe that you're going to die in Armageddon, and they do want all of the evil people to die, but they sidestep that whole issue by saying, we want everybody who can to come and make it into the new system and all this, right? But ultimately they do want people to die. They want the evil people to die, and anybody who isn't on the inside and buys the whole thing hook, line, and sinker is considered evil. It's just like you were saying earlier, where they would sit in the corner and they'd gossip about you, right? That is them marking us as evil. They did the same thing to me. And in fact, when I was in high school, I think there were probably 2 or 3 kids around my age from the Kingdom Hall who also went to my school. And the elders had them basically spy on me, follow me around, get information on what I was doing and who I was around and things like that. And ultimately, that is what ended up getting me disfellowshipped. So I do know what you mean. There's a lot of social ostracization, I guess you could say. So anyway, yeah, I was actually going to ask you, did you ever shun anybody when you were on the inside? Because I actually shunned my brother for years. He got disfellowshipped when I was probably 10 years old, and I shunned him all the way till I was like 18.
I never did. I felt that part was kind of bullcrap, and I always did. There was this. She was my babysitter when I was very young, and I loved her. And strictly in like the sisterly platonic way. She was just an amazing person to me. And she was disfellowshipped. She was going through a lot of crap. She was depressed, taking pills for it, and it drove her insane. She became, I think you don't become, but she was bipolar.
Right.
And she would come back every so often, and she was disfellowshipped. So the whole idea was, don't talk to her, let her come back, talk to the elders.
Right.
And I never listened to that. I would walk up to her and I would talk to her, and people would look at me. They would look at her with like disgust. And I would talk to her, and she's like, look, Barry, I know what you're trying to, but like, you can't talk to me. I'm disfellowshipped. And I was like, that doesn't matter. You're my friend. Also, I'm not baptized, so I have no obligation to listen to what they're saying. you
There
know.
you go. Yeah. Actually, were you ever
Nope,
baptized? Oh,
never,
lucky. Oh,
never.
that's awesome.
No, but the thing was, everyone pressures you into getting baptized, and
Yeah.
everyone gets baptized at like 8 years old. And I saw all my friends growing up and getting baptized and getting really cool gifts and stuff. But I always thought like being baptized was a very adult decision because I was like, look, I'm a kid. You know, I'm gonna make mistakes when I'm older, and I know that's gonna be a thing. I don't know who I am. So if I get baptized now and I make a mistake, it's gonna hit me a lot harder than if I don't get baptized and make a mistake and then repent. That was my idea.
Yeah, it's such a serious decision. I mean, it's basically what amounts to you marrying God, right? I
Pretty
mean,
much,
you're
yeah.
dedicating your life to this organization, and they have you by the balls, for lack of a better term, for the rest of your life.
Yes.
And actually, just want to touch on this little thing. I heard when I was on the inside, when I got baptized, actually,
Mhm.
that we weren't supposed to get gifts when we got baptized because it was something we were supposed to be doing anyways, and we shouldn't be praised for it. We should just be, people should acknowledge that we did the right thing. It's just this weird mentality about it. Of course, my parents got me a briefcase
Mhm.
anyways, and they clapped and everything. But yeah, it's just this weird mentality they create around it.
Yeah, we always did the whole gifts thing. Like I know that's because they told us the same thing. Like you're not supposed to, but the whole idea for at least everyone in the congregation was we're all family and we're all proud of you, so it's
Yeah,
gonna happen anyway. Just whatever.
for sure. It's pretty crazy though.
Mm.
But I had another here. Did you end up going to college? Because I know Jehovah's Witnesses heavily stigmatize it, and I didn't end up going till I was way older. I was probably 25 before I went to college. Did you end up going or?
No, but I was actually I never had any sort of issues with college, and I was on my way to go. Um, that was actually that had nothing to do with the religion at all. That was just family and money problems. And then my mom bought a house, and I was like, I can either go to college or I can help her pay for this house. So I had to make a choice. That had nothing to do with the religion, and she was all for that too. She was like, you should go to college. She was very into the
Interesting.
idea.
Okay. Well, that's good. I mean, there are some benefits to that, I guess. They don't outright ban college, of course, but they do
No.
talk about it a lot, and I think it's getting a little more intense as of late. Because when I was in it, they didn't outright say don't go to college, but there was just something in me that wanted to be a plumber instead. I
Mhm.
don't know why, but uh,
Yeah,
you know,
it's interesting how they'll do that. I dated a Mormon back in high school, and
interesting.
she sent me this picture one day. She was the worst, but she sent me this picture one day, and she's like, Mormons are CEOs, Jehovah
Mhm.
Witnesses are janitors. Which do you really want to be? Because like this was she wanted to convert me, and it's funny, like it's true.
Yeah.
They say dedicate your life to God. Don't dedicate it to making your life better.
Yep.
Don't because this isn't the life that you need to be enjoying. The one you need to be enjoying is the one in the future after you die. And which is a scary thought because if you're wrong, you've wasted your life and your potential.
Yep.
That's
It's
horrid. I know too many people. I grew up with, like I said, mostly girls, and their only ambition in life was to be someone's wife.
Yep. I know exactly what you mean. Actually, most of the time, Jehovah's Witnesses' main ambition is to, in general, is to have a skill that will be useful in the new system, home building or plumbing or
Mm.
welding or something like that, right? That's their main focus. And there's a disproportionate amount of window cleaners in the organization. Have you noticed that?
I was one.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
Yeah.
What that's about, but
I don't know. I used to go into Klamath all the time, and I would wash windows for doctors' offices all the time.
that is so funny. I actually knew a painter, a little side note here. He was in my congregation, and before he stopped painting, he sold his last one for like $100,000. And
Whoa.
then, yeah, I mean, he was pretty serious. And then he gave it all up for Jehovah. He wouldn't even sketch anymore because he didn't want to get sucked back into the life of art.
Oh my God.
Started an office cleaning business with his wife, and they just go clean a few doctors' offices a few times a week and pioneer with the rest of their time. It's so
Oh my
crazy, man.
God.
Such a waste, you know.
It's so interesting to me that you could have something that you're so passionate about, but then trade it for something that you could. I mean, they're obviously more passionate about God, which that's awesome.
All
Whatever.
power to him, yeah.
Right. But like to give up something like that because you're more passionate about something that, God, like one is physical and you have a gift and it's right in front of you. That's just that annoys us.
And you enjoy it too. It's not like a job where you make a ton of money. It's something you enjoy that you can do for the rest of your life. You know, it's such a waste of talent, man. But anyway, so I was wondering if you were allowed to use a computer very often, or how your family felt about social media stuff. Because when I was younger, I'm dating myself here. I'll just tell you I'm 28, but Facebook didn't exist, Google didn't exist, but I did have internet and a computer because my dad owned a computer company. But what was your situation with that, you know, with the internet and social media?
So okay, I don't know if this had much to do with the religion. I was born into a really, really poor family, so we didn't have the internet until I was about 13. And then I didn't have my own computer until I was 14 or 15, and I didn't have internet until I was 16. So I didn't really have to worry about that. But I do remember all the time people talking about, or at least the religious leaders talking about, don't get Facebook, don't get Twitter, don't use.
Yeah.
And they're so out of touch. They don't even know what they are. You know, like I remember some of the talks they would give and present about, you know, these certain social medias. And now I, of course, have a couple of them. And I'm like, they just talked right out of their buttholes. They didn't know what this was at all. You know, the same with video games. Oh my God. That one always bothered me though. Cause I was like, I play them. I know what video games are, you know.
Yep.
You are 80 million years old and you don't know what you're talking about.
I know they're convinced that you're going to go out and kill a prostitute or something because you played Grand Theft Auto or something. And they're not just afraid of that. They're afraid of video games in general, I think. I mean, they're afraid that they're just going to take over your life. I mean, it's like a propaganda campaign. I know we had a special needs talk on video games at one point, and it's just ridiculous.
Jeez.
But actually, this brings me smoothly into another question I had, which is, when did you start your YouTube channel? Because you said you got a computer when you were about 16, right?
Yeah, I got my own computer when it had to be earlier than that. It was about maybe 15 is when I finally had internet. And that was just like my computer had internet. I could go use my mother's computer from the time I was 13. So like I had internet, but it was her computer. When I started watching YouTube was when I realized like I really wanted to start making videos, but I didn't know what I wanted to make. And I found a guy named Olin Rogers, and he would tell stories and stuff. And I was like, hey, I have stories I could tell. And I would sit in front of the camera and tell stories. And my first channel was it was what you'd expect of a 17-year-old, like really cringy.
Right.
I think I'm funnier than I am kind of thing.
Yeah.
It never had anything to do with religion. And my mother, that was the thing I was scared of, because social media was such a big thing, but they never talked about YouTube, mostly because I don't think they knew that it existed.
Didn't see it as a threat yet.
Or if they did, they just used it to like how to build a house videos, you know? Yeah. So they never were scared of it. And I was like, hey, I went and talked to my mother. I want to start a YouTube channel, and I'm going to have my face in there, and I'm going to like talk to the camera. And she was really uneasy about it at first. But then as I did it and she saw some of the videos I made, she was like, yeah, this is fine.
Okay, not too bad. And you were a witness at that time, right? So 15, 16. I guess you kind of lucked out there. It's not so bad.
Yeah. My family was really lenient on a lot of stuff that their families weren't. Like I hear stories, and I'm sure you probably have a few where they're like really tight about the internet, really tight about what, Oh my God. Like I had a friend, if he ever wanted to get on the internet, his father had to be right behind him just to do homework. You know, it's,
Yeah, I know. My father actually, this may be a common story, who knows? But my father unplugged the modem from the wall and put it between him and my mother in their bed at night so that I couldn't access it. I don't know. He was just afraid of me accessing it, I guess. Just a crazy story. But I was gonna ask you like what your channel is about. What do you do on your channel? I mean, I saw a few videos myself, but for the audience at the very least.
sure. So I did kind of go back to my roots a little bit, and I tell stories from my past, not like a cringy 17-year-old, but I'm big into tech. I was a computer hardware technician for over a year. I've built over 2,000 computers. So I'm big into tech, and I know my stuff about computers. So I talk a lot about that. My most popular series is Console Peasant Quotes, and some of you guys out there probably seen it and you're recommended somewhere. It's hyperbole, pretty much just jokes on people who take their gaming platform a little too far.
Right.
It's all just like fun little gag at everybody. So I just pretty much do whatever I think is fun, and for now, I'm just gonna go as long as YouTube, until YouTube kills me off. Have fun with it for as long as I can.
That's awesome. Yeah, it seems like you're doing pretty well for yourself. I was wondering, how did you get to 150,000 subscribers? That is a really high number.
Um, it's funny people say that, and I don't even realize, but I started off just speaking my mind about things that bothered me. I was kind of screwed over by a couple companies when I made purchases, and I would talk about this company did this to me. Am I overreacting here?
Mhm.
And eventually, I just wanted to tell my stories, and my idea was like, if people like it, then that's awesome, and if they don't, whatever. And then I had inspiration from other places on the internet. It's funny, I still do it where I'll see a channel and I'll go, I want to do that. And then I just do. And if my subscribers like it, that's great. And if they don't, well, it's my channel. I'm going to keep doing it. And if they hate it, then I guess I die off and go back to work. It's fine. I love building computers.
Yeah,
Um,
I know what you mean. Yeah, I actually still have a normal job, although YouTube seems to be growing for me. It's a growing prospect, but I'm a software engineer, like writing code for various things. I guess I won't get into it too much, but yeah, I guess we're kind of in parallel fields here. That's pretty interesting. I didn't know you were into computers too. Huh.
mhm.
That's pretty cool. So I was going to ask you, did you ever expect to be where you are on YouTube? Like when you started, certainly you didn't think it would get this much attention, get this big.
Yeah, no, not even sort of. I figured I started my channel a couple years ago when I was working at Walmart, and I figured I'd probably tap out at about, I don't know, 100, 200, you know?
Mhm.
I never thought I was interesting enough. I thought I had some pretty cool stories, but I never thought that I had enough to actually give. Um, but God, it only took like a year, and I hit 100,000. People really, for some reason, liked what I did, and I couldn't for the life of me figure out why. Um, but
And
yeah,
here you are.
it's just it was really unexpected, and I think that's probably the best way it could have happened. And I'm glad it didn't turn me into some crap. I've heard of people like they turn into a really crappy egotistical person because of
Mhm.
that. But it's funny. I never check my numbers. I don't check my sub count. I don't care if it's in the green or in the red. I don't worry about any of it, because if I do, it becomes a job, and at that point, then I'm taking it, to a point where I'm not
Not
doing
fun
this because I
anymore.
like it. I'm doing it
Yeah.
because it's my job.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I check my numbers. I don't really, I don't know. I don't think that I'm egotistical. People would say otherwise, but
Yeah.
I don't think that YouTube has gone to my head. I think it's just my personality, who I've always been. I mean, I try not to be a jerk. I talk to everybody, talk to all my fans as much as I can. And yeah. So I actually had one more question for you before we wrap it up. And this goes back to Jehovah's Witnesses.
Sure.
I was wondering, did you end up growing a beard after you left? Because they're pretty persnickety about beards.
No, no, I probably would have, but I can't grow facial hair.
I
My
hear you, me either, actually.
my family is kind of like a hairless kind of issue. My father didn't start growing. He's got a full on beard, and he said he didn't start growing facial hair heavily until he was like 27. So I have a while to go, but I'll probably give it a shot when I can.
Yeah, that's funny, actually. My family is fairly hairless, also, except for my brothers. For some reason, they can grow giant beards, but I can't. And yeah, I tried to grow a beard in November because it's no shave November. You got to try to grow a beard,
Mhm.
and it just looked awful. I was like, forget it. I'm not doing this ever again. So yeah, I guess that was my one try at a beard. I guess I'll give it up.
Yeah,
But
I I I did something like that, and I can show you the picture. It's not very pretty. It
awesome.
yeah.
I would love to see that. That sounds awesome.
All right.
But anyway, I appreciate you coming on. I think that's all I had for you. Did you want to mention anything before we go?
Yes, I will say, it's a bit of a story, but if there is anyone out here, I don't know how many Jehovah Witnesses watch this channel, but it's possible to leave if you don't feel it's right for you. If you do feel it's right for you, that's fantastic. But there are some things that you need to look out for if you do take off. And being honest with your family is really important. My my family still wants me back, and they send brothers, elders to come over and talk with me all the time. And I couldn't believe it. I don't know if this has happened to you, but there's this guy that keeps coming over, and he'll bring over, he knows I'm really into science and tech and stuff. And the last time he came over, he brought over a Jehovah Witness film that spoke of the Fibonacci Spiral, which, if you've attended any private middle school, you learned about that back in middle school. Or if you attended a public school, then you learned about that in high school. And it's the video talks about how amazing the Fibonacci spiral is and how many natural occurrences you can catch it in, and it is fascinating. But then it just asserts at the end, how amazing is it that our God created the universe with this spiral in mind? And that's where they catch a lot of people. And I couldn't even believe it. Like, looking back to where I was to now, that would have blew my mind 3 years ago. And then looking at it today, I'm like, you just asserted something based on observational science. And that's just something that I would say, be mindful. Look out for that. Just know that if they show you something and then assert something else without evidence, just like Christopher Hitchens says, it can be dismissed without evidence. That's my final statement.
That is very well said. I could not agree with that more. Yeah, maybe I'll put a clip in here at the end about Christopher Hitchens and all that. But anyway, thank you for coming, Barry. I appreciate it. And hopefully we'll talk again sometime. All right.
Yeah.